Alina was running like her life depended on it, stumbling through a frozen forest with blood smeared across her clothes and face. Every breath she took came out in shaky clouds, the cold cutting into her lungs as she tried to push through the heavy snow. She had no idea where she was going. She simply needed to get away from whatever was chasing her. Somewhere ahead, through the trees, she noticed a reddish glow leaking out from the windows of an old building, almost like a weak promise of safety. She pointed herself toward it, desperate and trembling. But before she could reach it, something stepped out of the darkness, a tall figure wrapped in a long black cloak. The figure grabbed her by the throat with a freezing hand and leaned in close enough for her to feel its breath. It whispered a single word into her ear, "Andre." Alina jerked awake, heart hammering. The room around her was calm, but her mind was still trapped in the nightmare. She knew it wasn't just random. That name wasn't a coincidence. Andre was her fiancé, the man she loved more than anything, and they were only days away from getting married. Andre had been working himself into exhaustion lately, taking on whatever jobs he could pick up, try to save every bit of money before the wedding. Still shaken, Alina went straight to her aunt, Yevdokia, and told her everything. Yevdokia listened, then gently brushed it off as nothing more than a strange dream with no hidden message behind it. She reminded Alina that she knew her own feelings, that dreams were just dreams, and she shouldn't let fear crawl into something as pure as her love for Andre. Later that day, Andre came home from work. Alina ran to him, hugging him with so much relief that he laughed, asking what had gotten into her. They lived in a small Ukrainian town called Konattop, where life used to move slowly, almost sleepily. But things were changing. News kept spreading. Russia had launched a full invasion. Troops crossed the border near Nobel and were moving quickly along the Eastern Front. Their region was marked as a dangerous zone. Andre kept quiet at first, watching the situation get worse day by day. Then one night, he told Alina they needed to leave. No arguing, no delays. He took her by the hand and led her away from town, planning to bring her somewhere safer before things escalated. Only once they were already on the road did Alina learn the truth. Andre wasn't just some regular civilian trying to stay out of trouble. He was a military cadet. His plan was simple: make sure she survived, then head straight back to his base to serve. But the invasion was spreading faster than they expected. Russian units had already blocked the main roads, forcing Andre to take side paths through forests and smaller villages. Alina begged him to turn toward her aunt's house instead. She believed it would be safer there than running around blindly. They never made it. While driving through a forest road, a group of Russian soldiers emerged from the trees and forced them to stop. The path behind them was already blocked. The soldiers questioned them, and Andre pretended to be nothing more than a harmless man just trying to drive his fiancée to safety. For a moment, it looked like they would let them go, until one soldier suggested they take the car for military use. Then things got uglier. The men started staring at Alina like she was prey. Their commander stepped forward and said they could take the car, as long as he got to have fun with her first. That was the moment everything snapped inside Andre. All the fear he had been swallowing, all the love he felt for her, and all the anger toward the invasion exploded into action. He pulled his weapon and fired. The shock on the soldiers' faces lasted only a second before chaos erupted. Gunshots tore through the quiet forest. Andre killed one instantly, shot straight through the eye, before dragging Alina into the trees. The Russians fired back, bullets ripping through branches. Somehow, through raw panic and determination, the couple managed to escape. But the damage was done. The Russian commander realized right away that Andre wasn't a civilian. One of his men was dead, and several had been hit. Even with their protective vests saving them, the unit felt humiliated, outsmarted by someone they severely underestimated. Hours later, after running through the forest and cutting across hidden paths, Alina and Andre finally reached her aunt's house. They walked in hoping for relief, but were greeted by heartbreak instead. Their dog lay dead in the yard, killed by a stray bullet during the chase. And then Alina discovered something far worse. Andre was shot. He had been bleeding the whole time. The bullet was deep in his chest. He tried to laugh it off, insisting he'd be fine, but he could barely stay standing. She rushed to find help, but his condition worsened too fast. Nothing they did mattered. Andre died that night. Her nightmare replayed in her mind. The dark figure calling his name, the sense of doom closing around her. What she brushed off before now felt like a prophecy she had failed to stop. and something inside her broke open. Her revenge began that very moment. While Russian soldiers quietly wrapped their fallen comrade in a tarp, Alina washed Andrei's lifeless body, her hands shaking uncontrollably. She whispered that she had lived through countless wars, seen more death than most people could imagine, but nothing had ever hurt like losing him. He was the reason she wanted to live as a human in the first place. He was the reason she hid everything she truly was. Now that he was gone, every soldier involved would pay, and none of them would get a clean or quick death. Driven by grief, Alina went to a locked room she had sworn never to open. She sliced her palm and used the blood to break the seal. Inside was a mirror that reflected not her face, but the truth she had buried centuries ago. A tattoo shaped like heavy chains glowed faintly along her arm. Alina wasn't human. She never had been. She was an ancient witch, thousands of years old, who had willingly sealed her powers so she could build a quiet life as a mortal woman. Andrei had been the reason she could choose peace. Now that he was gone, that peace collapsed, and the darkness she had buried rose with full force. While she awakened her power, the Russians were dealing with their own problems. Commander Ravny received news that the supply route carrying their food had been blown apart by a Ukrainian strike. The men were hungry and frustrated. Then another message arrived. They were now allowed to operate freely, meaning they could loot the nearby villages without oversight. That news made the soldiers cheer like wild animals. They stormed into homes, smashing doors, dragging out anything they could steal. One man pleaded with them, insisting he had nothing worth taking. They didn't believe him. After turning his house upside down, they found something they considered valuable, a young virgin named Kita. One soldier named Bandos immediately began harassing her. Another soldier, Owl, refused to participate, saying he wouldn't betray his wife. But Bandos didn't care. Outside, a middle-aged woman approached the guards and began shouting at them, warning them that their cruelty would bring a terrible punishment. Her defiance only angered the soldiers. Kalaz raised his gun and shot her in the head without hesitation. Later, the unit returned with sacks full of stolen food. Kita, tied up and gagged, was dragged inside and thrown at Bando's feet since no one wanted to challenge him. Meanwhile, Alina gathered a sample of Russian blood from Andrei's car bumper, just enough to cast her first spell. Darkness wrapped around her like an old friend. That same night, a soldier named Salur suddenly fell violently ill. He vomited clumps of hair and thick black slime. A small piece of paper slipped out of his mouth with a message written on it. "This forest will be your grave." His screams filled the camp as his legs felt like they were being carved open from the inside. He died in horrifying agony. The others shrugged it off as a heart attack. They had no idea what had really happened. Bandos, still drunk on cruelty, finished abusing Kita and started laughing again. The commander finally lost patience and told Bandos to release her. Bandos dragged her into the woods and dumped her like trash. Minutes later, a car stopped beside her. Alina stepped out. She didn't say a word. She simply opened the door, silently offering Kita a choice she didn't have before: revenge. At that same moment, Commander Ravny had a nightmare of his own. He was inside Antiochia's house. A witch stood before him, telling him that he and all his men were already marked for death. He jolted awake, drenched in sweat. When he stepped outside, he spotted Bandos taking a leak, and the stream running from him was blood red, like all his sins were pouring out of him. Elsewhere, Al sat alone at a guard post, thinking of his wife. He heard a whisper and drifted into sleep. When Alina approached him, she lifted her hand to end his life, but then she saw a family photo pinned to his jacket. She paused, lowered her hand, took the photo, and walked away. He would live. For now. The next guard wasn't as lucky. Roller noticed money scattered across the ground, a trail of bills, almost like bait. Without thinking, he followed it deeper into the forest. Step by step, he wandered right into Alina's trap. The following morning arrives in a way that feels almost unnatural, as if the night had been holding its breath the whole time. When the soldiers wake up and check their phones and radios, they all discover the same disturbing message waiting for them. Every single one of them. It is short, written like a threat carved straight into their nerves. "This forest will become your grave." The moment they read it, an uneasy silence spreads through the camp. No one says anything at first, but every man is thinking the same thing. This is exactly like the little slip of paper that Sir coughed up right before he died in that horrible way. A few soldiers exchange panicked glances, whispering under their breath. But even with Ravni's barking and ordering, the soldiers can't shake off the dread, especially when one of them, Dufa, steps forward and says he found something strange in the woods during patrol. The whole group follows him, nervous but curious. When they reach the spot he's talking about, they freeze. All around them, hanging from thick branches, are little handmade dolls dangling from strings. They sway in the cold morning wind like tiny bodies. They look old, dirty, and creepy enough to twist anyone's stomach. Commander Ravni immediately starts interrogating the guards who were on watch the previous night. Owl, still shaken from everything that has already happened, says the night seemed calm, except for one thing. The only soldier who might have noticed anything unusual is Roller. That's when they realize Roller isn't even there. His post is empty and nobody saw him leave. A group splits off and begins tracking footprints through the frozen mud. After following the trail for a while, they finally find him, and what they see makes several men instinctively look away. Roller is tied tightly to a tree, completely motionless. His lips are sealed shut with black thread. The moment they get close enough to react, Alina's magic hits like a thunderclap from somewhere far beyond their sight. Roller's entire body erupts outward in a violent explosion that sends everyone stumbling back. Despite the horror splattered before them, Commander Ravni still refuses to accept the idea of any supernatural force. In his head, it's got to be engineered tricks, traps, maybe explosives rigged by Ukrainians. He keeps insisting it's real people doing this, not anything magical, anything but that. Meanwhile, Alina is far away, diving deeper into her rituals. Whatever humanity she once held on to is slipping away like smoke. She calls out to the dark spirits, one after another, strengthening her powers with every whispered chant. Outside the house, Yevdokia, who everyone simply calls Aunt Dokia, goes about her morning routine, hanging laundry on a rope and trying to pretend things are normal. Suddenly, the sky fills with crows. The sound is loud at first, and then everything falls silent as every single bird drops dead onto the ground around her. Shocked, she runs back inside and finds Alina surrounded by candles and symbols, locked in the middle of a spell meant to bring harm to Owl's family. Aunt Dokia panics and begs her to stop. She knows exactly where this kind of magic leads. If Alina keeps going, she'll eventually lose herself completely. Her own body will start breaking apart from the inside until there's nothing left but rage and darkness. But Alina, fueled entirely by grief and fury, has no interest in warnings or wisdom. She tells her aunt that she's older, stronger, and not someone who should be told what to do anymore. At that moment, the truth about the aunt finally comes out. She isn't actually Alina's biological relative. She was a woman Alina saved during World War II. Over the years they lived together, Alina shared small pieces of witchcraft with her. Though Dokia isn't immortal, the magic slowed her aging down so much that she barely changes through the decades. Still, all her emotion and pleading can't reach Alina anymore. The witch's heart is completely set on revenge. Back at the military camp, Owl gathers the remains of Roller with sorrow written all over his face. While he's in the middle of that miserable task, his phone lights up with a message about his family. Panic hits him instantly. He asks Commander Ravni for permission to take a few steps away so he can find better reception and check what's happening. But when he tries sending a picture, the signal suddenly cuts. Ravni becomes irritated and tells him he's imagining things, that the enemy is probably feeding illusions into their devices. He orders Owl to stop panicking and return to his duty post. But just as Owl tries to obey, the signal suddenly returns. This time, multiple photos show up, images so horrifying they nearly make him drop the phone. His wife and child appear in these twisted, gruesome pictures. Owl loses control completely. He sees an armored vehicle nearby, its door left open. Without thinking, he jumps inside, starts it, and speeds away, desperate to save his family. But the forest gets darker and heavier around him. Then, right in the middle of the road, a vision of Alina materializes. Terrified out of his mind, Owl swerves wildly, hitting anything in his path. In the chaos, he accidentally runs over another soldier, killing him instantly. The rest of the men finally catch him, drag him out, and Ravni orders him beaten and tortured, convinced Owl has been corrupted by enemy illusions. As dawn arrives again, a sudden eruption of explosions shakes the entire area. The soldiers scramble for cover, only to realize that their own weapons are firing without being touched. Alina has seized control of the machinery with her power. In the forest, Kaz, one of the cruelest soldiers, gets separated from a group. Suddenly, he sees the ghostly image of the woman he shot in the head earlier. Panicked, he fires at her again and again, unaware that he's shooting at nothing real but Alina's illusion. Then Alina appears herself, disguised as Commander Ravni. Believing his superior is standing there, Kaz lets his guard down for one moment. Just enough for Alina to kill him and tear out his heart to strengthen her dark powers even more. At the house, Alina eats the heart with the hunger of something no longer entirely human. Aunt Dokia watches with horror as she notices something very wrong happening beneath Alina's skin. When she tries to intervene, Alina lashes out in fury and wounds her accidentally, warning her to stay away until everything is over. Night falls, and the remaining soldiers gather, trembling, exhausted, and terrified. One of them whispers about an old story passed down in the region, the legend of the Konattop, which, suddenly, everything they've seen begins to make horrifying sense. But Commander Ravni still won't believe it. He orders everyone to stay awake and insists they capture the enemy alive. Thick fog drifts through the forest, and Alina uses it like a veil. Her voice echoes through the mist, telling Ravni that resisting the Konattop, which will only lead to death. When morning comes, the men discover something even worse than before. The corpses of their dead comrades have vanished. A trail of blood leads deeper into the woods, and Ravni forces the group to follow it. Bandos, meanwhile, begins vomiting blood. Then a cockroach crawls out of his throat. He stumbles away from the rest, trying to find safety, but fate drags him straight into Kita, the girl he tormented earlier. Now she's ready for her revenge. The rest of the unit eventually reaches Alina's house. Two soldiers stay outside to guard the entrance, but they get into an argument, and one kills the other in a sudden outburst. The remaining soldiers follow Ravni inside, where blood trails paint the walls. One soldier gets trapped in an illusion, mistakes a bottle of acid for an enemy, and ends up killing himself in a horrific way. Ravni, completely detached from sanity, thinks he's captured Alina and begins attacking wildly, only to realize he's beating his own soldier. That is the moment where the last piece of his rational mind breaks. Alina steps forward. She doesn't hide anymore. She finishes off the remnants of the unit until only she and Ravni remain. Just then, Aunt Dokia stumbles into the room, crying, pleading for Alina to stop. She reveals a truth that freezes Alina where she stands. Alina is pregnant. Andre's child is growing inside her, a life she never knew she carried. Ravni panics and grabs Aunt Dokia, threatening her, but his weapon refuses to work under Alina's magic. He is finally defeated. Alina hovers at the edge between revenge and mercy. She wants to kill him, to erase the last person connected to the nightmare. But something inside her hesitates. Something human. Aunt Dokia offers another path. She suggests wiping Ravni's mind and delivering him to the Ukrainian military as a broken, harmless madman. Alina agrees. The story ends with the birth of Alina's child. She holds the baby in her arms, no longer the peaceful woman she once wanted to be, but not entirely the monster she feared becoming either.